Hi everyone, I'm Ken from Crypto Trading KS. If you're new, welcome, and welcome back to our regular community. My goal is to assist you to be more of a financial blessing to yourself and those you love, and also gain real wealth in the process. Let's run the numbers. Bitcoin is currently trading at 47,857, up 0.95%. Ethereum 3615, up 5.79%. We're going to do a rapid comparison of Bitcoin in the stock market, as well as the early warning system to detect market crashes. It's really important to keep our eye on the stock market. Stock market is a way or a vessel for holding money, as are bonds and crypto. All these markets are interconnected. When one gets hit, the others get hit. That's a really important thing to understand. Also, countries don't escape. A movement in the US market will affect markets globally. The S&P 500 up 32% for the year, gold down 9%, Bitcoin up 341%. Looking across global markets, we can see China is slightly down, as well as Brazil. Also, South Africa is a little bit down, as well as Poland. We can see that coming up, Australia, India, the US, Canada, Mexico, and Sweden, and also France. In the last session, the greatest sector gains were through energy, industrials, and materials. The greatest losses were in utilities, and that was the only sector that actually had the loss. Consumer staples and real estate had modest gains. Looking around the world at cases, we can see an 8% decrease in weekly changes, weekly cases by percentage. These case numbers are still very large, but it's great to see the percentage decreases starting to come through different countries. The absolute number still remains quite high. It's really important to deal with problems when they occur and not before. Looking at the major indexes in the US, we can see the Nasdaq has come up in the last session. Bitcoin has also done well. Fear has been leaving the market. We see improvements across the S&P 500, the Dow Jones, and the Russell 2000. Please keep in mind, on the 17th of September, this Friday in the US, we'll have the quadruple witching. There could be some volatility in the market, as is always the case with quadruple witching. That happens 4 times per year, once per quarter. Just for assistance, the quadruple witching that occurred in June saw the markets actually rally after that point. Quadruple witching occurs 4 times per year on the 3rd Friday of March, June, September, and December. Options expire monthly and futures expire quarterly. On a quadruple witching event, what we have are the expirations of stock options, single stock futures, stock index futures, and stock index options. That means a lot more volatility in the market. We can see here the fear index. The VIX is the fear inside the market. We can see that the fear in the market recently came up. It was decreasing. What we can see in the pre-market action right now is the fear is edging up. We would expect the markets to edge down, but this is only very early days. The VIX can move around literally crazily. You can see the VIX spiking up and then shooting down. When we look back at the quadruple witching that happened in June, what we saw was fear entering the market and leaving very, very rapidly. If we want to go back to past experiences with quadruple witching, you can see very little fear entering the market and pretty much instantly repairing itself. we go back one more, we can see that things were fairly calm and then fear spiked and then it came down within a matter of 5 days. This is the VIX. It goes up and down like crazy. The reason I talk more about the VIX is the inverse of the VIX, this red line, can be very predictive of market price movement. It's quite good. When there is a spike in fear, the inverse VIX goes down, as do the markets on average. It's a really good indicator to give you an edge in the market, and that's what I'm all about. Anything I can do to help you to be more of a financial blessing to yourself and those you love. Around November 2020 for stocks and for bonds, it was August of 2020, we had these values: stocks 95 trillion, bonds 128 trillion. It's important to understand the bond market is very large. When fear enters the market, stock funds can flow to the bond market, and that's exactly what they do. This increases bond prices and decreases bond yields. Also, when fear leaves the market, the bond money flows back to stocks and of course into crypto. You can see that a 10% increase or decrease in stocks, a 10% flow of the stock market funds into crypto, 10% flow of funds, of bonds into crypto, would be very changing to the crypto environment. A 10% flow from stocks, a 10% flow from bonds into crypto would raise crypto by 22.3 trillion, and this is way back towards the end of 2020. There's so much excess money printing that happened since then. Having a $24 trillion crypto market is not so far-fetched. We've seen a recent uptick in bond prices. We know what that means. That's all about a potential flight to safety, a risk-off event. Now, is this significant? That's the real question. We've seen an uptick in the 20-year treasury bond, 10 to 20 years, 7 to 10, 3 to 7 year treasury bonds, and 1 to 3. All of them have basically come up. We can see a little bit of a decline, but is it substantial enough to get across resistance? Let's have a quick look at that. We're just going to zoom in on this 20 plus year treasury bond, the TLT. Zooming into the 1 day, we can see that this resistance has recently been broken, but not by too much. We can also see there was a lot of attempts to get up and down here. We've got a very weak exceeding of this resistance. It is yet to turn it into support, but we need to keep our eye on this. When bond prices go exponentially up the wall, yes, we worry a lot. We have to take corrective action there. We're not seeing that just yet. When I said exponentially go up the wall, this is what I'm talking about. You can see here in green, this is the NASDAQ going back to 2020 before the crash in March. The NASDAQ was going up and we saw bond prices rallying exponentially like this. That told us there was a very, very big problem in the market. This is not happening right now. Compare then to now. Completely different perspective, but it's really important to understand the dynamics. You can also see that bond yields, the TYX, came down exponentially. That also signified a big issue. We're not seeing that either, but you need to be aware of these things. When we talk about bond yields, let's compare Bitcoin to bond yields. We see the bond yields were coming down, now they're going up. When they go up, it signifies greed. When they come down, it signifies fear. But when they drop like a brick down, literally take the lift or the elevator straight down, there's a big problem. We're not seeing that right now. But having said that, the 30-year T-bond yield, the TYX, is showing weakness. we must keep an eye on it. Let's compare the Bitcoin price to the DXY, the US dollar currency index, and have a look at the NASDAQ 100 in the inverse VIX as well. We can see that the DXY is appreciating in value, it's going up, as is Bitcoin. We can see the inverse DXY, fear is leaving the market, and the NASDAQ is improving. Sorry, I said inverse DXY. I meant inverse VIX, and the DXY is increasing. Let's have a look at Bitcoin compared to the precious metals and the inverted DXY. The inverted DXY can give us an understanding of how precious metals can move. You can see the inverted DXY here in green. As it moves, the precious metals, especially silver and gold, tend to move. Look at poor old gold, has had a terrible time recently. It's definitely under the weather. Silver has sold off, gold has sold off. The inverse DXY is decreasing, but this is a major sell-off. The thing with gold, in times of trouble, gold tends to be a safe haven. We may be getting substitution effects now. Bitcoin is getting a reputation as digital gold. Perhaps we're seeing a flow of funds from the gold market into Bitcoin. We can also see that copper came down, palladium went up, and platinum was relatively flat. Just having a quick look back to the 2020 crash and comparing the current price action, you can see that gold was basically falling off a cliff. What happens initially when there is weakness in markets? Gold can rally strongly, but when the actual thing hits the markets, the crash hits the markets, gold comes down like an absolute brick. Bitcoin tends to bottom out first, then gold, then silver, platinum, the inverse DXY, palladium, and lastly copper. We can see right now that gold and silver are dipping down. We'll keep our eye on things. Comparing Bitcoin to inflation expectations, we can see inflation, the expectation of inflation over the 5-year period and the 10-year period were coming down recently. And then we saw an increase in inflation, and now we're seeing a little bit of a decrease. Overall, the trend is up for inflation, but the Fed's concept of inflation being transitory seem to have some merit, but we'll wait and see, just like everything. In the past crash, going back to the 13th of March 2020, you can see that the break-even inflation rate for the 10 and 5-year basically fell off a cliff, as did the price of Bitcoin and the NASDAQ 100. We're not seeing this behavior at the moment. The transportation indexes can be a really good insight into the health of the underlying market. Comparing Bitcoin to airlines and transportation indexes, we can see recently the transport indexes came down as Bitcoin was coming down. Notably, the NASDAQ 100 was actually going up when this happened. That caused non-confirmation between the transport indexes and the NASDAQ. Generally, a weakening of the upward trend ensues after that. We can see that the transport indexes have since flattened out. What we have here is the NASDAQ Transportation Index, the New York Stock Exchange Airline Index, the NASDAQ North American Transportation Index, the Dow Jones Transportation Average, and the iShares US Transportation ETF. I mentioned that there were quite a few transport indexes in there. I just thought you might like to know what they were. The conclusion from this is that we're not seeing any real issues in the market. If we had a breakdown in all of the transportation indexes just collapsing through this floor of support, yes, then that is cause for concern, but that's not happening right now. When comparing Bitcoin to oil, Brent, and crude, What typically happens when the economy gets weak, Brent and crude just plummet. What we're seeing now is that actually oil is rallying. This is why we need to look at so many different things and not just base our decision off one or two things. Looking at Bitcoin and Bitcoin public companies, public companies with Bitcoin exposure, over the last 3 months, we can see Hut 8 Mining Corporation, Hut, has taken a recent hit to price. Bitcoin has been coming up. BTBT, Bit Digital, is in the number 2 position. We can see Voyager Digital continues to decay. Riot has had a bit of an uptick, as has MicroStrategy. ADE, the Bitcoin Group SE, continues down. Just reading out the rankings, Hut 8 Mining Corporation, Hut, BTBT, Bit Digital, then Bitcoin, BitF, Bitfarms, Marathon Digital, Mara, Hive Blockchain, Galaxy Digital, Silvergate Capital Corporation, Argo Blockchain, Coinbase Global, ADE, the Bitcoin Group SE, MicroStrategy, Riot Blockchain, and Voyager Digital. Across the last 90 days, comparing Bitcoin to Bitcoin ETFs, out in front, GDLC, the Grayscale Digital Large Cap Fund, BitW in second position, Bitwise 10 Crypto, BTCQ, the 3iQ CoinShares Bitcoin ETF, EBIT, the Bitcoin ETF, BTC X.B, CI Galaxy Bitcoin ETF, BTC C.B, the Purpose Bitcoin ETF, BitC, the 9-point Bitcoin ETF, QBTC, the Bitcoin Fund Canada, then Bitcoin, underneath Bitcoin, 21XB, 21 Shares, Bitcoin ETP, Grayscale, Bitcoin Trust, BitC, CoinShares Physical Bitcoin, and in last place, Osprey Bitcoin Trust. Having a look at Bitcoin, Bitcoin is currently trading at 48,123. We can see it's at this quite strong support level. Let's see what happens as we move towards quadruple witching. There could be quite a bit of turbulence in the market. In our community, we love catching these long tail rejections. They're incredibly profitable. So I'll just read out the support levels under the current price. They're 47,819, 47,206, 46,566, 45,830, 45,268, and a key at 40,741. Over the many decades that I've been in financial markets, one really important rule is 114. These are rules that I have created to help me stop losing money. Rule 114, markets penalize certainty. Markets do penalize certainty. When you're absolutely sure something is going to happen, the markets will penalize you for it. That's just the nature of the markets. People expect a lot of downward volatility, and if they're certain of it, the markets will probably pull the rug on that. It's really important to be open and to be flexible and just follow price action. Just a quick look at Ethereum. Ethereum is currently trading at 36.31. It's done really well, but with such a strong wave up, we would expect prices to move in a wave and price to come down. That doesn't mean it's all over. Price is always moving in a wave. It's going up and then coming down, going up, coming down, going up, coming down, coming up, going down. It's just the way that it is. It's a natural dynamic of all markets. The support levels below Ethereum, 35.90, 35.15, 34.47, 33.94, and 33.19. A few community members reached out to me and asked me if I would go through specific coins. I've popped them together here for you. EGLD, Elron. What you can see, And pattern recognition is really, really important. When I talk about pattern recognition, I'm talking about Rule 109, Enhanced Pattern Recognition. It's a very valuable skill to develop. With Elrond, EGLD, what can you see here? You can see that there is resistance that is now starting to be overcome. There was support which turned into resistance, but now this is starting to turn around. This is how I look at charts, just visually with my eye. It's always good to put in the lines, but it's always even better to actually do it with your eye. What can we see about KSM, Kusama? We can see a line running down here. What is that doing? That is basically doing this. If we join these lines, what are we looking at? Resistance became support, came up, retested, resumed off. KSM is looking to go higher. Is it supported by price? I don't know. Let's have a look. Of course we know. We see here this particular channel of support. That's looking quite good. It's taking off there and not running down this support line, which is also positive for KSM. Having a look at DOT, what happened here? What do you see there? Do you see resistance? For example, if you were to draw a tight resistance line, you can see it's still under resistance. So maybe you think, I maybe dollar cost average in, but it's not just turned around yet. Cardano, what's happening with Cardano? We can see, for example, and it really depends how you draw this. This is the line from that top, from the cluster of opens and closes to the cluster of the top, which is not a very meaningful line. What we would do instead is just do something like this. What is the support looking like? It's looking relatively good. Has support found a secondary level of support? For example, we can see the resistance here has been overcome and it's now being supported by that initial support line. That's quite good. Let's keep our eye on that. There's some overhead resistance, but it's certainly looking like it's coming through. When we look at AVAX, what do you see? Do you see that, for example, the overcoming of resistance? What's happening here? We can see that we're getting an upward support line, and it really depends how you draw these things. There's a lot of ways to do it. Always remember, you're an artist. You can draw it whatever way you want, so long as it's meaningful to you. We can see the price supported itself quite well, hit this support line and started to bounce. What about OMG? Osmigo. We can see that level of resistance was overcome. We can see that there's a level of support running through here, but price is weakening. What about Harmony 1? Harmony 1 is quite interesting. If you were to draw resistance lines in from the top, you wouldn't get very far because it's not really doing too much. It's such a sharp angle, it's not really meaningful. But if we started to draw lines down here, for example, fairly tight lines, we can see that resistance is being overcome and things are starting to equalize out. If we look at it this way, for example, from around that price action, we can see that we're starting to get up to a switching. Now, where I draw the lines is probably because I'm experienced in drawing many lines on many charts over many years. I have a look at things, which is not quite what you may see, but that's okay. We're all artists. They're all happy little accidents, as I saw in a Bob Ross documentary for the first time recently. What a cool guy that is. Bob Ross is awesome. When we see this, we can see definite support. We can see this resistance being rejected, but that's all looking fairly healthy. What I do, the reason I drew this line from this top to this top going down, is to draw a tight one through there and see if price reacts with that upward line. That probably explains more why I drew that particular line in. Have a look at HBAR. What are we seeing here? There's many ways you can draw this chart out. I would start here. I would look at it and say, not trying to fit that bottom, but just saying, okay, that's about the lowest point, so that's a support line. What happened next? Well, what happened in the top of this line? We're looking through here, just lining it up to this point, not that point. I want to see how price is reacting going forward. One of the things that you can look at is that you can never predict future price action. It's almost like I put the chart there when I draw it. I don't care about what's happening over here. I'm trying to understand what's happening going back. We're looking here at this low. So we're seeing a basic pattern starting to emerge where there is strength. And we know HBAR has been doing quite well recently. What we need to see is any level of particular resistance playing out. If we draw a tight resistance line down there, we can see price is starting to get across it. Also, there's a confluence of support lines down here. So overall, this is starting to shape up to be quite an interesting entry position around here. And we're always looking for those long tail rejections. I hope that helps. It's just a little sort of TA lesson that I threw in because you've stuck with this video, so I wanted to give you even more value. So let's have a look at Elron with that in mind. What do we see here? We can see resistance coming through here. This is a very tight resistance line. I'm not trying to align it to these peaks. I'm trying to get a signal. Is this thing changing direction? What about here? When we look at this particular price action, if I draw from this low to this low, I come through here, not very helpful. What about these ones? Well, that's a little bit more helpful because we get more touches on the line. You can even draw it more tightly if you wished to near the bottoms of these. That would be fine as well. What's happening across here? And there's many ways you can do this. Don't forget you are an artist. See the top of that to the top of that. If I draw that through there, what are we seeing? Just extending it to current price. We can see that we're potentially turning our resistance line into support. We've potentially overcome this, well we have, and turning it into support. It's kind of early days yet. We're still yet to hammer out a higher low, but this doesn't look too bad. It looks like it's going to improve. If that was the case, we could draw, for example, something like this, and we're expecting price to get into this area to go forward. I hope that helps. It's just a little bit of insight into how I look at particular charts. I was going to say specific charts. I'd like to say thank you very much to the very kind and generous members of our community who reached out and bought me a coffee on buymeacoffee.com/cryptotradingks. I'd also particularly like to thank Jans and Gary and Paul. Very nice comments. Thank you so much. And to all the other people who have left comments there, it's very heart-touching. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I love helping you out. Please let me know in the comments how I can help you more. I hope you found the content useful. Please consider sharing and liking this video if you think it will help others. Thank you to our moderators for keeping our community safe from scammers. Please say hi and let me know where you're viewing from and if you have any questions. If you would like daily updates on price movements in the crypto market, please subscribe to YouTube. I've left helpful links in the description of this video. Please remember, crypto is volatile. Always prepare yourself for the best and worst case scenarios. Reality will likely be between them. Stay safe out there. Take care, and see you next time. Bye for now.